They say it takes a village to raise a child, because children need a lot of different people to look out for them. Families can use all the help they can get. After all, no parent is perfect. That's why McCoy leads the Early Intervention and Prevention Initiative. We want to showcase all of the excellent programs in our city that help families learn and grow together. Because when we learn and grow together, we make our village a better place to live. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy this episode of Our Kids, Our Families, Our Communities.
Hi, I'm Mitzi Wilson. I'm the Early Intervention and Prevention Initiatives Director at the Marion County Commission on Youth. And this is Our Kids, Our Families, Our Communities. It's a show to provide resources for youth and families in the community about issues that individuals may be facing. And so to begin the show, I would like to introduce you to our guest today. So we have Lori Gert. She's with the Zero Suicides Initiative at Community Health Network. We have Austin Harris. He's with Youth Move Indiana, which is a program at Mental Health America of Indianapolis. As well as we have Madeline Zielinski. She is the Youth Move Coordinator at Mental Health America Indianapolis. So I would like to just begin and kind of give you all a moment of time to kind of tell us a little bit more about yourself and the work that you do at your organization.
Sure.
So Lori?
So Lori Gert with Community Health Network, but I manage a suicide prevention grant called the Zero Suicides for Indiana Youth. And youth is defined as ages 10 to 24. It's a SAMHSA-funded grant, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Service Administration. So there's really a two-pronged role in the grant. One is to really engage youth-serving organizations. That could be schools, that could be the Department of Child Services, that could be primary care physicians and healthcare systems, to really infuse suicide prevention and depression screening as part of their roles. So it's really about policy change. And then the other side of the grant is really about engaging communities and training and reducing stigma and talking about depression and suicide, that it's okay to talk about it.
Thank you. And Austin?
Hello, I'm with Youth Move Indiana. I'm a youth advocate, so a lot of what I do is I try to empower, other youth to step up and share their stories and in order to empower others. And I just kind of do that by just advocating for myself and, telling my story and showing that it can happen, it can be helpful. And it just kind of values that youth involvement into the system and to empower change, just under the wing of lived experience and just various other things. So that's one of my biggest things. I act on the Youth and Family Subcommittee. I participate in MICSOC, and I'm actually proud of myself. I'm potentially going to be on JSAG, which is the Justice Support Advisory Group for the state, and that's a governor-appointed position to be a youth advocate for the state. So that's pretty good.
And you had mentioned MICSOC. You want to say a little bit more about what that is?
MICSOC is Marion County System of Care Collaborative. That's what MICSOC stands for. It's just kind of a board where we just kind of get all the providers and various different entities together, and we just kind of mesh and try to gel this, future of the system vision, And same with the Youth and Family Subcommittee. It's just two different levels of pretty much the same thing.
Thank you. And Madeline?
Yeah, so I'm the state coordinator for Youth Move Indiana. We're actually at Mental Health America of Indiana. So I work across the state to empower youth to feel valued about their story and that they can stand up and use their voice to create system change. So our biggest effort is the System of Care Grant, and that is also through SAMHSA. And our main focus is to take providers and youth and have them work together to create policy development and develop programs so that the providers are working with the population that they're serving.
Thank you. And we're all really together today on the topic of suicide prevention, knowing that it is Suicide Awareness Month. So Lori, if you would kind of tell us a little bit more about both Suicide Awareness Month, but also your work with the Zero Suicides Initiative.
Sure. One of the interesting things when you're talking about systems of care and policy change, a lot of times you need data to change policy. So one of the things that, in light of Suicide Prevention Month, the rates of deaths by suicide in Indiana have been rising over the past 10 years. So in 2007, it was somewhere around 788 accounted for deaths by suicide. In 2015, the preliminary numbers are showing in the upper 900s. And every year from 2007 to 2015, that number has been increasing. So what that data can do is really help change policy and really show policymakers this is an issue. It's a hard issue to talk about. It makes people uncomfortable, but many Hoosiers are dying by suicide, and we do need to make some changes to address that. So that's part of Suicide Prevention Month, is talking about it, getting that topic on people's radar.
Thank you, and that's important information to have. So. And Austin, would you like to talk a little bit more just about Youth Move's work around suicide prevention?
Well, from more of like of my perspective, I would say that just kind of like I said earlier, just empowering youth to tell their story and share their story to promote change. Another thing that we do, we have Safe Talk trainings, which is a training surrounded around just awareness and just being able to, identify various triggers that would people struggle from, suicidal thoughts and things like that. Just being able to identify those, what's going on, be able to, just kind of give a little support and, more focused on the referral aspect of, sending off, not trying to fix those problems, but trying to help them find help. So that's one of the trainings that we, help facilitate to we actually facilitate those trainings to help others. And those trainings range from ages 15 and up, so even youth in the system can utilize those trainings to just kind of identify some triggers in themselves, at times. So I think that's very important.
And I understand kind of oftentimes it can be hard for people to know what to do when they think an individual may be having, suicidal thoughts, as well as they might not, know kind of what their role is. If they're kind of a parent or a peer, they don't know what to do. So kind of what are some steps that people can take?
My one thought I have on that is asking how people are feeling, asking how people are dealing with the stress in their life. Sometimes asking is the prevention by connecting with other people. But you're right, I mean, people need training on how to ask because it's a sensitive subject. So Safe Talk is an excellent training. There's other trainings out there as well. There's something called Question, Persuade, Refer, or QPR. It's kind of a takeoff of CPR. Everyone knows what CPR is, it's a life-saving intervention. But we also want to promote QPR as a life-saving intervention as well. So it's ask a question, save a life. But you're right, it's also about not necessarily doing that treatment or intervention in the moment, but it's learning to talk about it, learning to ask about it with confidence and competence and compassion and comfort. So that can be one of the big steps, is really just having to ask. It can be really hard.
And asking can make people, sometimes people think, well, if I ask, does that put the idea in their head? But in my experience, it's been, if you ask, then usually that person, they feel cared for, if that is what's happening for them. And if it's not, they feel that in the future, you would be someone that would be okay for them to talk about if they were to be facing those types of issues.
And so you kind of mentioned some of the myths or some of the, which often lead to maybe fears that people have about helping and reaching out. How do some of those trainings help people be more prepared or feel more capable to help someone?
I think just having the practice of being able to try those things in a safe space where you can get feedback from professionals that And really just having practice even saying the word suicide can be helpful. When I took the trainings, I felt like I didn't think it was going to be so hard because I felt I was really familiar with the subject, and I'm pretty, brave about talking about those kind of things. It doesn't bother me. But I found that verbalizing it in that moment was a little more difficult. So having the practice was really helpful for me in taking those trainings.
I think the other thing the trainings do is really help people realize that a lot of people who say they're suicidal or thinking about ending their life, they don't necessarily want to end their life. They want to end the emotional pain that's going on in their life. So if folks can kind of think about it from that angle and address this person is in emotional pain and can I help that, that sometimes can feel less scary than this person is suicidal, but yet it's addressing the same core issue, that emotional pain. So sometimes that can help.
And I think part of the Safe Talk training, one of the things that kind of will help me myself, feel comfortable with the situation. Well, not the situation per se, but addressing the situation with someone, is it helped me to learn the invitations that typically somebody who's suffering from suicidal thoughts and behaviors, they tend to send out invitations on just kind of on a whim. So you kind of have to catch those. And a lot of times people may get those invitations and don't even realize it. And that's a part of how the psychological, kind of game that some people who struggle with those behaviors would take. And I think that, just identifying those invitations, recognizing those invitations, it would allow somebody to act quicker and probably get them help a little faster. And I believe that that's a very big part of that. And just knowing what to ask, learning the language, the dialogue, and various other things, I think that's very, very helpful.
Thank you. And that's what a lot of those trainings can do, is kind of provide people the comfort to feel a little bit more confident when they are working with someone or maybe have a relationship with someone that may have suicidal thoughts. And so, Lori, one of the things that the Zero Suicides Initiative works to do is to really change the narrative around suicide. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So the Zero Suicide is a national initiative. It's not something that was created via the grant. And it really is trying to change the culture around zero. And people say, well, zero is a pretty lofty goal. And yes, zero is a very lofty goal. And that's one of the culture changes that we're trying to impart, is that truly no death by suicide is acceptable. And that the other big issue, the other big culture shift is that the belief that suicide is preventable. That's really where we're going with this, is that it's a community effort. Suicide prevention is not just for your PAT mental health professionals. Suicide prevention can be done by everybody, because what suicide prevention at its core is about is connecting with other people. So teachers can connect with their students, parents can connect with their children, bus drivers can connect with the kids that are on their bus. Really, suicide prevention is, everyone has a role in that. And one of the big initiatives for the grant is infusing that kind of idea into healthcare. A lot of times people think suicide prevention, depression, well, that's a mental health issue. The grant is really trying to change that perspective to make it a public health issue, and including our healthcare providers in that as well.
For someone that may be watching today, maybe they're wanting to know, what are the risk factors, or what are the warning signs that they should be looking out for? Do you have any kind of advice around that?
Well, just to name a few, I know just as far as just distancing themselves, just kind of just inviting, the need for just talking. A lot of times it may just be like, yeah, and they just kind of keep extending that, well, can you talk to me? But a lot of people don't. As far as the videos and the trainings, they show you that a lot of people may walk past these invitations. They may walk right past them. Whereas if they would have taken on to those invitations, they may have helped that person in the time where they needed help. And it was just like, I know one video just kind of showed a girl, she was at her locker, and The guy, he came and asked her if everything was okay, and she just kind of was very distant and just, trying to, let him think that everything was okay, but her actions were not portraying that she was okay.
Okay.
And that's where he could have taken that extra initiative to say, no, you're not okay, okay? And I'm going to help you. But instead, he just kind of in the first part of the video, he kind of walked off. Then they came back and showed the other half where the second part of the video, he did take that initiative and he made sure that he helped as much as he could. So I think that I think that's one of the best things about the trainings is the videos that kind of give you the perspective of the real life situation and then just the discussion afterwards. Just some people throwing out their real life situations to it. So.
Which makes it more real.
I think that's an important comment to make. There's not necessarily a pat list of warning signs because everybody is different. It's really about a change in behavior. If you know someone well and they've done something and now they're not doing it, or they not used to do something and now they're doing it, noticing changes in behavior is also a big key, because you're right, invitations can be very subtle. They can be, I'm sleeping a lot. Well, I'm just tired, I'm busy. You can be sleeping too little. Or warning signs can be very direct, like, I am not doing well. Like, I feel like I'm a burden on everyone else. And taking that invitation. So warning signs can be a very wide array. So it's not like a checklist so much, but it's really noticing changes in people.
I think that there are some subtle invitations that they're talking about, like more specific ones I think could be, at least with a lot of the young people that we work with, things like saying that you feel worthless or that people would be better off without you. Sometimes giving away possessions that are important to you can be a sign of someone thinking about suicide. Saying things like, I can't do it anymore, I just want to give up. Or even just being apathetic, saying, I don't care about anything and no one cares about me. I think that the biggest factor that takes someone from feeling depression and takes it to that next step of suicide ideation is the isolation and feeling like they can't connect. So even just making one connection with one person can save someone's life.
And something that you touched on, really, Youth Move's role is to kind of engage youth in these conversations. What has kind of come out of some of that work that you've done through Youth Move?
That's a good question.
Well, I think one thing for sure that I could see is I'm seeing youth be more empowered to tell their story, to change.
Okay.
And honestly, that's a good feeling in itself to say, hey, I'm going to go and tell my story and help someone else. That can be, to a degree, self-care. It can empower somebody to, not focus on themselves as much, or just kind of, some of the trauma or, history that may lead to, suicidal thoughts, and may give them that, it's kind of like a coping skill, just kind of giving them that release of that aggression or stress or anger or whatever. Or depression or whatever, led to it. So,
and a lot of stigma I feel like has been reduced just talking about your story, like what Austin's saying of being able to share your story. It reduces the stigma in everyday life. So I find a lot more people being able to almost laugh at their depression, like make jokes about being really sad to their friends. Like, it's one of the things that me and my friends do is make these jokes to each other about how sad we are. And that's a way of us coping with our depression and knowing at least, I am sad, but it's okay to be sad sometimes. And other people are sad too, and we can still be friends, and that I'm not alone.
And I think one of the biggest things in addition to that is I just feel like when you see youth, when the, big entities, the ones that we see as kind of over our heads, the providers and things like that, just state and local entities. I think that we kind of give them the value of, wow, the youth should be here. We kind of embody that, just showing that, oh, these youth can come in here, sit down on boards and make a difference, and just kind of give us, insight on the everyday life versus reading a book about it or, hearing about it through a provider or, wherever outlet that they would use. Now they actually have this youth that is like, this is my life. I could tell you better than most, and probably better than anyone, honestly. So it gives you that real life perspective. And I just think that that's just the best way to go in any instance, is just getting that real life perspective. I just think that's the best information you can have. So just getting those youth to the table to say, hey, this is me, and it just kind of makes it acceptable for all. And I think like one of the things that I went to Change Matrix training for the past couple days, and one of the things that they were saying that I really kind of took from that was, I'm sorry, like as far as when you step up, I think it gives us that, releases that stigma, gives us that acceptance into a community, which is very important because that's our end goal. Our number one goal as a youth is to feel like we are a part of the community. And if we feel like we're a part of the community, that's really good. And I think that their focus was kind of more on a community, support for everyone. And I think that's kind of, what Indiana is trying to focus on, is trying to make the community support that to the point where there is no stigma. Okay. There is no separation from somebody who has these, external or internal, stressors or whatever, so.
Thank you. And Lori, I see you nodding your head. Is there more you want to add to that?
Well, yes, because I feel like the voice of lived experience is relatable, and when you're relatable, you're connecting, and when you're connecting, you're preventing. So I completely agree, and everyone wants to be able to relate to someone, so the voice of lived experience is always, I feel, 10 times more impactful than any professional with all this expertise in their head.
And so, really we've kind of talked a bit about ways that people can, receive training to be able to be more comfortable to help individuals that may be feeling suicidal, as well as ways that they can just generally engage in the community and advocate. But for people that may be watching and really, maybe they know someone that they have some concern around and that they want to be able to support, are there numbers or, websites that they can go to for support to get help?
Absolutely. There's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is a big resource. It's a call-in center. It's 24/7. More locally, in Indiana, the crisis text line, you type in help now to 20121. That's a crisis text line that's manned by Mental Health America folks of Greater Indianapolis. So it is local, and that is 24/7. And that's not just for those people who are experiencing crisis. It's for the helpers. It's for people who are caretakers and caregivers. So you can text that line as well and say, hey, I'm needing help, I know someone, and you will get a response. So it doesn't necessarily have to be for that person in the imminent crisis right then and there.
Thank you.
And we also have another support line for teenagers who are going through suicidal thoughts or behaviors, and it just is a text line. It's start to 741-741. And it's just, sometimes if you don't have the ability to send those invitations out to anybody, it may just be at school. If you're feeling that way, just send it a text. It's very subtle. It's very, you're not putting your business out there, or you don't have anybody really, nobody really knows but you and whoever's on the other side of that phone. And it's still a confidential, way to kind of help self-manage and cope. So,
can you repeat that number one more time?
That's start to 741-741.
And they can text that as well.
Yeah, you can text start to from your phone to 741-741.
There's a website too that is a wealth of knowledge, anything suicide related. It's www.sprc, so Suicide Prevention Resource Center.org. And it has all kinds of information on that website.
Well, thank you. You all have really provided, a lot of important information today. Is there any kind of, final thoughts or final statements that you have that you would want the viewing audience to know, or just something that is kind of on your mind as we've been in this conversation?
Talk about it. Ask.
I would just say, just don't think that, I don't want you to think that something's wrong with you. I don't want you to think that these challenges is something that are negative. I want you to feel like it's just something that everybody has mental wellness issues. I believe it's just everybody's different, and how we deal with things are different, and how we approach things are different, and you just got to figure out how you are in yourself. And when you are ready to, you feel like you're good, I just, try to encourage people who have been through the system and have learned how to manage yourself. Like, I personally consider myself one to have learned how to self-manage, and, now I would like to pay it forward by just kind of empowering others to get to this point and, just kind of get somebody else's ship rolling. Like, you gotta, I would say give back. Definitely give back.
That's powerful.
And support
Thank you.
others.
I think the biggest thing that I've learned in my work is that the experiences that a lot of people have felt have been like the worst parts of their life, or the lowest points, or maybe things that they don't appreciate about themselves, are really what qualify and empower them to create real change. And so, not to devalue yourself just because you've maybe had negative experiences, and that no one is ever really powerless.
Thank you. You all have been really wonderful guests. And so I just would like to thank you, Lori, Austin, and Madeline, for your time today. And that ends our show for today. For more information around suicide prevention, you can visit the Marion County Commission on Youth website. On our resource page, we will have additional information, as well as you can follow our Facebook page as well. So that will end our show, and I thank you for watching.